head is the question of like, for general population, obviously I want to make sure you can kind of pick up the heavy thing from the ground and pick up the heavy thing from the shelf. And we're going to vary it up that way. But, it really makes me think about the discussion around fatigue, you know what I mean? And have you able to perform all these tasks in various states of fatigue? That's sort of, I think, where, it's kind of harder to condition for that, let's say, right? Like train for that event, so to speak. Again, it kind of goes back to sort of the stoop versus squat conversation. The pro stoop, camp, it's this idea of like, look, man, if I've been squatting for a while and something fatigues, like the whole squat falls apart. But all I got to do with the stoop is, again, maximize contact area, decrease distance to my hips, and that's way more fatigue resistant. And therefore safer, would be that argument. But I think it's an interesting point, kind of going through all these varied levels of fatigue as well. And it's something that's on my mind that way.
Yeah, and I think, that's where I think we're too separated from the idea of like working with people's diagnoses and looking at actually improving their fitness and conditioning, right? Because I think like one of the number one things you can do with somebody that's in pain, especially more chronic pain, would be just improve their overall aerobic capacity so that they aren't as likely to just fall apart due to fatigue, right? And finding ways to do that safely, a starting point for many injury models, right? And just finding, okay, like this is where we have to be careful with the things that provoke your pain. But it's really important that we get you to be more aerobically active in ways that are distant from your pain right away, right? Because then they have more of a buffer zone for doing things that, maybe aren't optimal from a body mechanics standpoint. But they're not going to just, get into that fatigue state as quickly. And then, there's, as with the research on aerobic capacity, there's just many other things that are promoted by building your aerobic capacity, right? Like there's more blood flow. There's a analgesic effect of just getting, your body to be in better physical condition in many ways, right? So that I think is super important, but like it's not necessarily something that people coming out of school for working with orthopedic pain are really good at, right? And they don't know how to connect the two too well. And I think also sometimes it's almost like too simple. It's like, okay, like you want to be doing more specific stuff with your hands, or you want to be doing more specific stuff with your diagnostic, understanding of what's going on with the body. But like sometimes the best thing to do is like, I just got to get you a better way to be active. You know what I mean? Like get more steps throughout the course of the day, get into an aerobic conditioning plan. And really that is just me stepping back and say, please do this. Right. And there's less that you're doing as a professional there, but it's an ongoing process to help someone to do that can be this big bang for your buck for a lot of pains and a lot of things that you're going to want them to do later.
Which to bring this kind of full circle, like that's a real comfortable place to be, to know that your anatomy and the science and the diagnostic approach, and you can picture the wheels are turning in your head, and then you get to go, all right, man, let's just work on your conditioning. You get to like, that's a great place to be. Whereas if you're just flying by the seat of your pants, like, I hope I didn't miss it. Okay, get on the treadmill. Like that's a real uncomfortable place to be. But yeah, man, that's a nice, that comes up, and you get to just sit back and chill.
I'd agree. And what, I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and now that I've kind of veered more towards personal training, like, and I have like more of my schedule is filled with people that, have had injuries in the past, but I'm really training them, and I've been training them for years. It's like, what's the difference in having a background or being a therapist and a trainer too? And ultimately it's not like I'm doing more physical therapy. It's just that when people have a pain, like I don't actually freak out about, you know what I mean? And I'm not saying that in a way that like patting myself on the back or anything. It's just like just very used to it. So,
Mm-hmm.
and actually going out of the training process when there's pain, like not doing too much, not overreacting
Mm-hmm.
to a client's symptom, and keeping them in their training process is actually something that, being both a physical therapist and a trainer, I think is where the value comes.
Yeah.
In that it's like, okay, like, yeah, there's no reason to actually not work out today from based on what you're telling me. We will monitor that. We will see actually how what we had planned today is affecting what you're coming in with. But I'm not going to change the whole plan just because you had a complaint of pain. We're going to use that as something that we're monitoring. But many times it's just staying in the process turns an initial complaint into something that doesn't last,
Yeah.
versus when you now change the whole process. Like, one, you're actually taking the momentum that you have with training and slowing that down, but then you're also making the complaint bigger than it was.
Right.
Right. And, the more typical model is you have your trainer and you have your therapist. So
Mm-hmm.
when you go to therapy, it's all about the pain. It's all
Right.
about the thing that you're trying to eradicate. And then when you go to your trainer, it's like, anytime there's pain, it's like, that's not my area. So, we're not going to do what we had planned today. And I think it is finding that bridge between the two, where you're comfortable in just saying, like, a symptom or a complaint might be just part of things we have to manage, just like weakness, just like immobility, right? Just like not getting enough sleep, right? And like that, things are different day to day, and being aware of that. But I think, having experience with people in pain really helps you allow people to go through their program.
Yeah.
More consistency.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, this is where, to your point of, the strength coaching, fitness, professional kind of hat, paired with the rehab or pain-based therapy hat. Like, yeah, man, look, we were doing auto regulation before. We're doing it now, right? You told me you got 3 hours of sleep that one night. We ticked down some intensity. You're telling me you got a little, sensation that you don't like in your knee. We're going to tick down that volume. It's a good way to acknowledge it, be a responsible professional, but then go, okay, great, cool. Since this is not the end of the world, let's keep on rolling. It makes me think of the first time I'd ever heard of the importance of finishing the set when you get low back pain from Michael Ray from Barbell Medicine. You got to finish this, especially low back pain. Take some weight off, do whatever you want, man.
Right.
You can't walk out of the gym.
Yeah. And I think that brings up the concept of like looking at a movement in a continuum, right? And just saying that, like, a 405-pound deadlift is the same movement as a 225-pound deadlift, right? And sort of arbitrary in the long run, like how much that you're doing, right? Because there's eventually going to be a weight that cripples anybody,
sure,
right? And it's all relative to like where your strength is, and pain sometimes comes in just in you've done a little bit more than you were ready for that day. But instead of shutting it down, depending on how acute things are, right? Just showing yourself that, this isn't the movement that killed me. It was the weight within the movement that happened to get me today. So if you could just, lower the weight and finish the set, I think that's actually really, really smart, just to look at it that way. Or just do something that you can do, like pick up you just had a barbell deadlift, pick up a kettlebell and just do the same movement. But it just keeps that idea that it's the movement of hinging that you're doing. You're just adding load to it in different ways.
Yeah.
And it was the load that might have got you today, but you can do some smaller version of it. That also, I think, speaks to the idea of the value of getting stronger, right? So if you have this continuum idea, if you are getting hurt only at the highest ends of, resistance, well, most of your daily life will be kind of spared from that. And it'll be easy to say, okay, well, maybe I just don't go that heavy, right? Like, especially if you're not an athlete and you don't have to go that heavy. It's just like, let me let go of those higher numbers that tend to be creating pain. But like, I still got a lot that I can do. because I've
Yeah.
taken the time to gradually get myself stronger, right? Because I really do believe that if you do the same thing and you just keep building it up, something will break you down eventually,
Yeah.
right? Like, but part of that is like not enough variability, right? Because you might have like a competitive mentality where it's like deadlifting and squatting are the two things that I need to do and I need to progressively get better at. And like, I don't want to explore anything else. Or it's just like, I'm going to just see how heavy I can go. But eventually there'll be
Yeah.
something that breaks you down. So just having that idea of saying, well, like I can still do a lot. I just can't do this much.
Yeah.
And now let me train less than that. Let me do other things. You're way better off than someone who is afraid to do the movement at all.